I'd like to call this meeting to order of the regular Board of Directors meeting for Paradise Recreation and Park District. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can we have a roll call? I got it.
Director Alma Green. Director Mary Belfay.
Present.
Secretary C. Rodwick.
Here.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodman.
Here.
And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Here. I'd like to welcome all guests here and online. At this time, if anyone would like to address the board concerning any items that are not on the agenda tonight, please come forward.
Hi, I want to say thank you. I did enjoy having the bicycle rack today and at the January special meeting. I did come here also for the wildfire risk reduction buffers meeting. It was good to have a wildfire or a fire professional discuss the practicality of what's effectively handling halfway up the slope and decide that instead it'd be much better to place, if the buffers were to exist, to place them up on the ridge top on the other side of the canyon. It might be relevant for the board if there were any future attempts to acquire parcels that were essentially unusable on the so-called sunrise rim. And as for the district manager's desire to create walking trails from town to our public lands, if that is indeed the board's wish as well, I would remind you that we do have public lands on the upper ridge that we would very much like to have access to from the populated parts of Magalia. But somehow, Chico Environmental's initial study for the Lake Loop Trail left all of that completely out of the project plan, that the existing trails of desire were conspicuously left out.
Thank you. Is there anyone online? No, Director. Thank you. Moves us along to the consent agenda. Does anyone have any issues?
I do. I'd like to pull it. Item 3.1.
Do we have a motion for the rest of the agenda?
I move we approve the consent agenda minus item 3.1.
I'll second.
Okay, just to discuss the minutes from February 14th. There was just a I guess miscommunication.
We got a motion. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Huh. I just skipped over it. Roll call vote. Director Alma Green.
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay.
Aye.
Secretary C. Rodwick.
Aye. Vice
Chairperson Jen Goodland. And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes. Now on to 3.1. I got confused about an abstain for I believe it was Patch. Mary abstained, and I thought we had vetoed that, but we did not veto that, and she abstained. So I corrected it from 5 ayes to 4 ayes, 1 abstain. And that was the only correction made.
Thank you. We get a motion.
Motion to approve item 3.1. With
Correction, right?
corrections.
Yeah, okay.
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Director Alma Green.
Aye.
Director Mary Belfay.
Aye.
Secretary C. Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland. and Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
That moves us along to committee reports. Finance Committee. Dan?
Question, do we not have to approve the consent agenda? I mean, we removed something and approved something that we moved, but do we don't accept the consent agenda?
Yeah, and the confusion that we had the roll call vote that jumped back to that, and then moved forward with the correction on the 3.1.
We had 2 roll call votes.
So we're caught up.
We're okay, Mary.
Okay.
Finance Committee?
Yeah, if the chairs would like to give a summary, I could fill in with.
Well, I'll try. All board members have copies of the staff report related to our finance committee meeting that occurred, I believe it was on February the 8th. Is that right, Steve? We discussed 2 items on that committee's agenda. First of which was a presentation from Dan and staff about the PRPD investment policy, and Catherine was there, by the way. And we had a few questions, had a good dialogue on that policy. Subsequently, that was on tonight's agenda, and that was part of our consent agenda, you probably noticed. And the other item that was on our agenda for committee discussion was to discuss the CPS HR consulting classification and compensation study proposal. We had several quick questions about that proposal. And some of the questions that the finance committee asked, not only as it pertains to overall cost of the proposal, but also more importantly, the makeup of the proposal itself. We wanted that referred to the Personnel Committee for their consideration, and I believe that Personnel Committee did receive that, and hopefully you'll point out the questions that Finance Committee asked staff to bring to the Personnel Committee. I don't have a copy of that in front of me, so I don't remember, but there was something in the contents of the proposal about the number of classifications that could be evaluated, and I thought anyway, that the number was excessive given the makeup of our district, and hopefully you shared that with the Personnel Committee. Anyway, that's basically, but we referred both of those forward, one of which was the Personnel Committee and the other one to the board as a whole, which was the investment policy. Dan, you might want to add to that. I don't know.
I think because that item is coming up on 6.2, we can address it then.
Okay.
Thank you.
Personnel Committee?
So, mentioned, we brought up the CPS HR consulting firm, as requested by the finance committee, and we will be discussing that further on the agenda today. We also discussed, kind of a timeline for the district manager evaluation and, the wages, for, this was just a brief conversation about changes in wages coming up for staff and some of the requests that they're gonna bring forward.
Thank you. Mary? Rec and Park?
Yes, we had the Rec and Park Committee and a few other staff members and quite a few people from Concal went and toured the Concal school, which was, or I guess it's called the Community Day School, but the Concal School. And it was really, they've done a lot of work to bring it up to date, but it still needs a lot of TLC. There's lots of things that the gym could be used for, the little room that had the stage. They had all these really great rooms for use. But in my opinion, the best thing they had was 2 baseball parks or fields that if they were updated, some of the people from this area could use those as practice fields because we all know we're very short on baseball fields around here. But it was a great tour, and it does bring up a lot of opportunities for collaboration of events over there and between PRPD and us. And the rooms need a little TLC, but they're clean and ready to go, but they still need a little love. But it was great to see all the Concal people that were there too.
How many Concal people were there? Approximately.
6 that
I
didn't
think
have
there
to
was
be there.
6. What?
6 that didn't have to be there.
Right, yeah,
Yeah.
they were there.
Oh, and they did get a grant for the literacy center,
Right.
and so they're working on that. And they're waiting on the grant for the rest of it. All right, that moves us along to old business. We don't have any. New business, 6.1 Piranha Swim Team Agreement.
Yeah, so your packet is the swim pool agreement, and it's pretty standard from what we've had in past years. I think there are some updates. And I'm looking for. I think one of the things that changed was the cost.
The hourly.
On there, the hourly rate
Yeah.
is different. And hold on just a second, I could find the other items. But it's pretty simple in comparison to what it has been in the past, and just an update to getting it ready for the next swim season.
That's for 2 seasons, right?
2 seasons.
Right.
That's right. If you just give me a moment, I'll see if there's another item that was identified.
Was the other item by any chance the insurance coverage?
Let me check.
Because it's 2 million now instead of 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, and I apologize. Jeff wasn't able to be here tonight. So thank you.
Hi, I'm Stuart Bannister, the president of the Piranha Swim Club. I think most of you may have known as of 2022, we were virtually shut down, but parents got together. We got a new board together, and with myself as president, and I worked very close with Jeff last year. And we appreciate that. And we do realize that I think that it went up 20% from $5 to $6. You are listed as additional insured. I'll provide those documents for you. We've already moved forward with the insurance signing. And that's about all I can say. We're looking for a 20% growth with our athletes, and we want a full season this year. Last year, we were cut short to half a season, and that's what we're looking forward to, and working closely with you guys.
Yeah, just a couple of questions. I know there were some challenges last year with getting a coach lined up, and I think our board was really very keenly interested in that. And then just how many athletes you anticipate?
Well, we had 35 last year. We're looking for 45 to 50 this year, and again with the full season. We just got hit with another coaching challenge, but we'll come through and get that handled as well. That seems to be a bugaboo because we have different times, like the May seasons run late afternoon, early evenings. From June and July, it's 7 a.m. to 10 a.m. We have 3 dual meets scheduled on Wednesday evenings that I've talked with Jeff about, and plus a few of the main swimming events on the weekends, which has nothing to do here at the pool. But it's another coaching challenge, but we will come through before May. And that's, they all have to go through Sierra Nevada Swim and get certified and do their CPR classes. Any coaches that we hire, we play it by the book.
Just one other, if you have challenges on coaches or assistant coaches or help on that, I know that we have a lot of board members that have very plugged into the swimming community and our staff. So feel free to reach out if there's announcements and all of that.
I'm asking you guys right now. Right now, we got hit with this on our last board meeting. Our coaches that we had last year both decided to bail. But I'm also talking to some friends at Butte College, but we'll take anybody that is available to coach and teach these kids how to swim. Again, it's a club team, but they do take their events seriously, and we want somebody that can help these swimmers get better. We have a couple from the high school that are pretty prominent swimmers, and we want to keep them going. So yes, I'm asking for help if anybody knows of coaches, please.
Is it possible to put a Paradise Piranha swim coach wanted on the Park and Rec Facebook page?
The way that we usually handle those, we reserve the job for our staffing needs, but there's a spot available for the public to pay for a slot in there. And that's a good way of doing it if you so choose. But we also have a pretty good network of getting the word out. So we'd be happy to share any recruitment information you may have.
I would appreciate it.
Does the Piranhas have a Facebook page?
We do, and we'll be putting our board meetings next week. So we're going to discuss how we're going to actually go out and advertise for this position. But we want to make sure we got our contract signed and we have, all our ducks in a row.
Okay. I'll look for it and share it.
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll have it on our website and our Facebook page.
Perfect. Thank you.
Is the coaching position volunteer?
No, they are paid. Our head coach is paid $25 an hour. Our
Oh.
assistant coaches are paid at $20 an hour.
I just worked with a guy who is the coach for up in Susanville for their swim team, and it's all volunteer. He doesn't get a dime.
Well, we're happy to
So I
pay,
wanted to-
financially, we're able to do it as well as pay for our insurances. And again, we look forward to working with Jeff again and taking care of anything we may need. So, and again, I would deal with you with signing the contract, I believe. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Staff recommends approving the 2024-25 PRPD and Paradise Piranha Swim Pool Agreement. What's our recommendation?
I motion to approve the 24-25 Paradise and Recreation Park District and Corona Swim Pool usage agreement.
Second.
Madam Clerk, roll call. Roll call vote, please.
Director Alma Green. Director Mary Belfay.
Aye.
Secretary Steve Rodwick.
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland. And Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
That brings us to item 6.2, classification and compensation study. Jen? Was that you? No, that,
We can start and the committee chair can fill in a little bit. This is something that has been in the works for quite a while. It was part of a recommendation from last year's wage and salary recommendations that we would take a look at our salary structure and update and look at comparables with other districts and all of that. Our staff did quite a bit of legwork on that, and it became pretty clear that it was challenging to match up some of the job descriptions with different districts that had different names and different job descriptions. And so we reached out to CPSHR Consulting, which is actually a joint powers authority. They're an agency. So they have been established to basically provide HR assistance to special districts and other municipalities and counties and so forth. So they gave us a proposal, went back and forth a few times before it came to our committee to review and take a look at it. So there's a few questions that I know that Sarah had chased down, and I wonder if you can go through those questions that came up at both committees.
Yeah, just basically I know the finance committee wanted just some additional like recreation type districts that they had worked with. So he kind of put some more of those in there, and then there were like cities that they don't necessarily have their own recreation department, but they have like an executive recreation director or, recreation positions, but not like their own whole recreation department. So he had put those in there. And then there was a question about like how often a study like this should be done. And I was trying to find there it is. The thing. I believe a full study should be done. I think it was every 5 years, and then a more basic study was every year. His name's Kevin Nicholson. The gentleman that wrote up the proposal and has been the contact.
I won't
this
say
was
that.
actually at the leadership course I took last month. They had examples of employment requirements that are on their website. And I've got a bunch of material in my car about it too. But we don't have to go through someone else to do this.
Yeah,
But it would put a lot of drain on the staff time.
Well,
to put it together ourselves.
something we discussed in both meetings is Christy had worked pretty diligently on coming up with, comparative job positions within the surrounding counties, but it's hard because our job descriptions and our job titles don't necessarily match with the people doing the exact same work that someone within PRPD does. So it's same work, different title.
Some tricky wording in it that basically said you need to do whatever we need you to do.
I will say this, and we'll let Christy comment in a second here, but one of the things I think we had tried to build into this is what are the triggers for that? I do not want to come back on just, set the clock 5 years and we're coming back, but to have a foundational document that we can update is a little bit different than us kind of doing a lot of research from scratch. And I think that's the big trigger for it. That there is sticker shock looking at this. I think when we reduced the scope from the original, which had a much more intensive scope. For example, they were going to review our job descriptions. Now what we do, we're trying to be in the course of them evaluating job description in comparison to other things, they're going to give us comments and not necessarily go through each job description. So we just went through that as an organization a couple of years ago. I think at considerable savings to go through that, but we know it took about 2 years to do that. So this is something that I think has been a little bit more time sensitive on. I think it's appeared in 2 budget cycles now with on the wage and salary requests. Christy.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that there was quite a bit of research done and presented to the personnel committee at the time. But ultimately, and from my perspective, it makes sense to have an outside third party that doesn't have any skin in the game in terms of the whatever the results are, that it's something that the board maybe feel more comfortable with because it's not from an internal staff members, providing the data that may appear to be cherry picked for personal benefit, which wasn't the case, but for appearance's sake, I think it makes sense in that regard for the third party.
I think one other thing that we were running into too, there's some good websites that have information on what salary is and total compensation is for staff. They're a little bit clumsy to use. You sometimes have to know the person's the exact job description or the person's name. They've changed positions. It can represent, it doesn't say that this person worked for half a year. It just says what that person's compensation was. And then the other thing is those sites are 2 or 3 years outdated. And so we wanted to get something that potentially could be more timely for us. So those kind of folded into the recommendations on moving this way. And I don't know if our committee members want to add some more on our discussions.
I think we just discussed too, the use of staff time and how we would for their time to be directed in other ways in addition to having somebody else from the outside in. How we, as we're trying to help
The people who work here, we want them working on important matters within the district.
I have a question for you, I'm sure, personnel committee. What questions were carried forward to you and your cohort on the committee on behalf of the finance committee? I'm curious.
Oh, Mary, do you remember the specific questions? I know you just wanted us to overlook more the personnel matter of. There was the one question you brought to our attention earlier about all of the, there was like 17 different classifications. And I don't believe we discussed that, or if we did, it said up to 17. And so the up to didn't mean there were going to be 17 classifications.
Right. But
Is that, Mary, do you recall more specifically?
so it was discussed then, okay.
Yes, it was.
So what was the outcome of your discussion? In other words, I see the contract hasn't changed at all. The makeup of the contract, there's no substantive changes in the text whatsoever. I just want a degree of comfort. In other words, you're saying it's up to, but not necessarily that's going to occur. that correct?
Correct.
As far as the classification and the number of incumbents to be evaluated.
Yeah, and Sarah may have some more information on this, but my suspicion is like a lot of these contracts, they have some set rates that you hit a certain tier.
Yeah.
17 might be a magic number for them, that if they go past that, then they hit a next tier on it. It's cost reimbursable. So if they evaluate 3, then it's that amount, but it's a not to exceed amount on the total. So it's not like we will be billed for the full amount of work it would take for 17. It's up to that amount, and then doing a assessment. I think it was just basically counting up of our job descriptions in different tiers.
So on the subject of cost reimbursement, that wasn't discussed with myself and Steve at the finance committee that I recall. But I see it's in the staff report for the full board. So can you explain that in more detail, how that works as it relates to the proposal as a whole? You saw an example. That's
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
but,
So just in general, so when we're going through, it works from both sides too. So for them to size up without spending an inordinate amount of time to go through all of our job descriptions and to, really give us a pinpoint answer, they will go, kind of a expectations and a not to exceed amount. And so with this being a cost reimbursable, is the total amount gives us kind of a assurance on what that amount would be. And it gives them kind of assurance on what the scope would be, that they're not going to be evaluating 34 different job descriptions. It's
right.
not to exceed 17, and they agreed on that price. But it's not a flat rate contract. It's not like this will be completed and the full amount will be shipped off to them. So it's going to be cost reimbursable, which means that any work that they've done, they have to submit their hours and work products, and that's how the contract would be structured.
Okay.
I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
The other thing that I recall, at least at the finance committee discussion, and I'm sure it was shared with the personnel committee, and Sarah's done a good job of reporting up to the full board tonight. When Steve and I inquired about the example of clientele that this firm has serviced, we didn't see much of a preponderance of any examples of other park and rec districts, particularly in California. In fact, we saw none on their list. We did see some from out of state, and that was the genesis of our question, saying, go back and find out that only clientele in California, preferably, that we can check on and find out what the outcome of that work was. It sounds to me like what you got in return when staff took that question to the firms. You got examples of individual positions and things like that, but nothing in California as far as another park and rec district. You did maybe get a city or two, but that's about it. I'm not saying that's bad necessarily. I'm just saying, I'm just curious.
Yeah, let me start with that. This material they provided, they've done a lot of these, so they've been around since 1985.
Right.
In fact, I think 2 previous governmental entities I worked for they had done some work, not necessarily on classification studies, but just on some HR related work. So I think they have a long list of clients. My understanding is the list they provided was like from the last 18 months. So ones that were kind of the most recent, but I think there's probably plenty of examples. One local example is PID's having a work study. Yeah. Oh, could you turn on your speaker, please?
The original list that you ran by the committee, finance-wise, has been further augmented now with this other page, but that was going back 5 years, not 18 months. The additional information we now have was just the prior 18 months, I believe, okay? We saw PID, and we were very, very kind and generous in telling us the outcome of PID's experience. That was something I believe Steve and I felt comfortable about. But my position still stands. Why, if this firm is well-known and it's nationwide, why haven't they had any experience with any other park and rec districts within California?
I don't know if that is an accurate statement. So I think that we just don't have that list.
Right.
I would be surprised if they don't have experience with it. So I think that, Sarah, maybe you had some contact with them on that in particular.
I mean, no, I wasn't completely aware we wanted specifically in California, I asked for Parks and Recreation positions that they've done research on, which is what the small list was. I can ask them for a more defined California list within Parks and Recreation.
And I do see the East Bay Regional Park District.
Yeah.
However, that's
They're huge.
apples and elephants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and I think it's interesting looking at this because, there are smaller HR firms that are out there who could have gotten private sector on it. That's a JPA. So that has some, I think, credibility on it being an agency. They have oversight on it. They don't have the same sort of profit motivation. It's not cheap by any stretch. The other thing is, I think, as far as complexity and being familiar with California law, they started off in California in 1985, created in California to start with. So, I think there's a lot of experience that would be hard pressed to find anything that's been doing this kind of work since 85 in support of municipalities and counties and special districts. They just happen to give us more of the variety rather than the depth. I think if they did East Bay Parks, that's probably a way more complicated situation than we will be. So I think that's they'll do credible work from all accounts we've heard.
I just have one question, and I don't remember if I asked this in the committee meeting, but did this go out to bid, or was there more than just one company that you asked to?
We did some light exploration, but I think when we sought out this as a JPA, that's one of the reasons why they exist. So it's kind of like that same sort of joint powers authority that we have through Sourcewell and competitive bidding and all that, but they're unlike those sources, which they supply a bid and then that's kind of going through the clearinghouse. This is starting off as an agency, so there's not a requirement for a bid process on it.
Remind me quick, please, what the timeline is. I know it's going to start after the budget period, but what?
5 to 7.
I know I can't find it.
I think in the proposal it says 5 to 7 months.
5 to 7 months. Thank
I
you.
guess that depends on, how many of those 17 classifications they do, or
It does say we provide just a partial list of agencies, so this is not reflective of all.
Well, I think it's definitely worthwhile having it done. I agree with Christy and her statement about it's not a biased party. It's not nobody that has a skin in the game. And I know just in reviewing our job descriptions with the committee and staff, just the job descriptions and how many different ones there were and what it entailed and what it meant. And then her trying to compare another Rec and Park district and their wages and their job descriptions that was not even different names, different work, same name, different job, same job, different name, different work. Some were union members, some were independent contractors, and some were employees. And so I think I think it's worthwhile to have it done and just get a fresh start and hopefully avoid things like people in lower positions getting paid more than people in higher positions, and which I know can happen in the way our budget works right now. So I think we need to have it done.
Is there any public comment online or in person?
So some of you may know that the county scorned advice in 2021 to use ARPA funding to help keep its employees, and they continue to have more and more vacancies that they were unable to fill until in 2022, they commissioned a class and comp study, which revealed they needed to raise salaries across the board by 10 to 15%. Which has helped some, but they're still very short-handed. And we hear in this room all the time how staff has a tremendous burden on their shoulders. And if you need to hire additional people to do all of the work of the district, then providing competitive compensation is the way to get that done. So I definitely think this study needs to be done. I think it needs to be done by people who are expert at it rather than having attempted to be done in-house. I can't speak for this particular firm, but if you're concerned specifically about California or Rick and Park districts, somebody who's in CRPD probably has contacts and could ask, sort of maybe even informally, what has Dawn done, what has Feather River done, what has CARD done, to make sure that they're paying people enough to get people to come and work for those districts. So again, I can't speak for CPS HR specifically, but I do support the idea of hiring this out.
I just, thank you, Mr. Stonebreaker. That reminded me that this was started back last year when we were looking around at different firms. We had looked at a couple that might provide that service locally. We reached out to CRPD, who recommended them. There was one recommendation they had, and this was considered a credible one. And I've heard from another district manager that had used their services in the past down in Sacramento area. So it's not, there is evidence from the other side of the users on it that are accessing the information on using this firm and them being credible.
Assuming the board authorizes this tonight, are both the studies going to be done concurrently by the firm?
Yeah, I think the timeline is so short, and there's, I don't think we have everything. It's probably embedded in the agreement here, but there were some other items that we wanted them to look at. For example, exempt, non-exempt
Right.
is part of that evaluation. It's probably long overdue for us to look at that again. I think the last one was 2016 or so, which resulted in some changes. And I think organizationally, we've probably changed. Those duties have changed in some of those positions. That's something you don't want to mess with if we're, having that third party looking at it. So I think that their intention is to have this kind of bundled together, which I think has some benefits for us because we can talk about the job. They're looking at compensation, but in the course of that, they're going to be looking at job descriptions and maybe able to give us some updates on it. So I think once they get digging into this, it's a pretty quick turnaround, and 5 to 7 months is
Well, the
not
proposal,
very long.
on page 4 says the classification study will take on from 3.25 to 4.25 months. And the compensation term from 5 to 6 months. So I don't have a problem with that. But I just want to be assured that they're doing both concurrently. They're not waiting for one to be completed and then start the other, that type of thing. Although there's probably a need for the compensation study to have some of the classification study far enough along in order for them to really do this adequately. If we approve this tonight, I'd like to request that the board concurs that as progress proceeds, that you, Ron, and the staff share that stage of progress with our personnel committee throughout the process, if that's amenable to everybody.
I think that's a great idea. And that was our plan, is to, as information comes, to share it with appropriate committee. So likely the personnel committee, but at some point there may be implications for a finance committee and budget. So I think there'd be some things that would come up, and we'd, tend to report that in more real time than waiting for a draft and a final and that type of thing. Thank you for that.
Anybody care to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for authorization of the district manager to complete the agreement with the consultant with the caveat to update the personnel committee as changes are happening.
Second that motion.
Madam Clerk, roll call.
Director Alma Green. Director Mary Belfait. Secretary Steve Rodwick. Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland.
Aye.
Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
That brings us to item 6.3, Neighbors to Neighbors Grant Agreement. Good job, Dan, and everybody involved.
Yeah, I just want to give a little background on this. For one thing, this has been such a fast timeline. I almost forgot it was on tonight's agenda because this was the type of thing that we got notice that it was open and available just before the holidays. I think like a day before the holidays, with a due date of February 8th. And not an overly complicated proposal as we know about some of these, but a really kind of complex putting the ideas together. So we utilize a very much a team approach on seeing how it was, laying out a framework. We had probably, what was it, guys? 5 or 6 or 6 or 7 people that were in on some of the different aspects of it. So definitely a team approach on it. And we were one of 9 entities to get this $750K grant. So the grant is a kind of a unique opportunity. So we partitioned the district into 4 areas, Butte Creek Canyon, Concal Basin, partitions. So we built that into some of these areas make a lot of sense geographically, but how the neighbors may want to split up, or if at all, Magalia and Paradise and some of these areas, we were advised to kind of keep that as part of the survey and exploration with California volunteers. A couple of things that are really important on this. This is an important grant from the standpoint of connecting neighbors. And there are things as we've been reminded of, I've been told by several folks in emergency services, for example, that 95% of all rescues are self-rescues. Either you're rescuing a neighbor or you are taking care of yourself. And so the more connections that the community has can help you during those challenging events. But there's also a whole ton of benefits that are present when you are connected to neighbors, you're connected to a group. And so we kind of had a unique take on this. It was not only geographical for us, but we had wanted to identify certain interest areas. So for example, there are quite a few young families on the ridge now. And so those groups that's part of their tribe and group, even though they may not live in that neighborhood, that's who they're associating with. They want to have those connections. So we had kind of a unique tiered aspect to this. We have a process where the first year we are building in some of these requirements on education for wildfire and climate resiliency and neighbor connectivity and some survey information and sort of these backbone information as part of this grant into events that we already have established. So we won't have to create them from scratch. We'll have to push in some of these programs into that. Second year, and probably starting the first year a little bit, we would want to definitely reach out, connect with partners that are already in the neighborhoods that are doing services, and partner with them with funding, and then kind of our what we're going to gain expertise wise in this, and help them put on events. So there's a whole bunch of events, and it is outlined here that kind of fit that model, I think, pretty well. That frankly made us the only special district that was entitled to funding on it. If you look at the list, it's City and County of San Francisco, it's Riverside, it's County of Los Angeles. They're all the big players. We're pretty small in comparison to that. So I think that's a testament to kind of some of the things we have going on already that is going in this program. Last part I wanted to mention is a huge component is to have people volunteer, to have them doing work in the community, kind of building that camaraderie, but also doing something good out there. And so there's a lot of, I think, opportunities for us through either some of the service groups that already exist up here that are doing work to kind of fortify those efforts, us kicking into higher gear our volunteer efforts. And so we're going to have I'd say enrollment or intake with some of those groups. So we're going to have, once we kind of get our feet underneath this, develop some information on how they can participate with us. And we want to have a very widespread on this and have as many groups and organizations and entities out there and see if we can tap into some things that are already exist in the community. So for example, the zone captain concept could make for going out to get information for us, or maybe those are identified as neighborhoods. So that's something that we'll explore. I know that several people in the room are very familiar with the zone captain concept and may help give us some information on that. I'm missing a whole bunch of stuff on this. Let's see. Report's pretty good on this. This is one of the simplest and I would say fastest turnarounds. It's a different type of instrument, but the state is providing on this. If you look at the form that's attached, it is essentially more of a contract for services than a kind of a typical grant application process. There's a lot of things, a lot of questions. I'm sure staff, I've missed some big ones. So if there's anything I need to add or questions that board members may have, well, I'll just pause there and see what you guys need. Give me a chance to catch my breath.
Can you explain or define or tell me what the California Volunteers is? Is that an organization? And is the goal that we're trying to get people all over California who volunteer for something, come here and do something?
Yeah, that's a great question. So California Volunteers is now part of the governor's office. So it's a relatively new organization. It's being headed by someone that we've actually visited with. They came up here and wanted to see some of the work we're doing. And that person has a history in public health. So they're taking a really interesting view that being connected to communities, volunteering, making your community better has positive health outcomes and a whole host of things that, anything from behavioral challenges to drug and alcohol abuse, and then just kind of that climate resiliency and just being connected to your neighbors. So it kind of has an interesting public health component, but the idea is to increase Californians working at a neighborhood scale. Locally, it won't be like we have a call for volunteers for throughout the state. It's intended to be homegrown. So that's and by homegrown, I mean Butte County, because we do have some great resources here with Chico State, Butte College may be able to help out, especially with some of the aspects and some of the other groups that may be able to provide, share information. One thing I think is really super important, we intend to have a core group of our staff that is administering this, but we need to have a lot of outreach to some of the groups that are doing good work and bring them under the umbrella and have them share their information. So from this standpoint, I think I almost view it like it's almost social venture capital to kind of create something over the next couple of years. And maybe some of those things will catch hold and be just in our fabric of the community. So, volunteerism, there's a lot of volunteer history up here, but how do we kind of make that more formalized, make it more fun, having a more festive atmosphere to it and, really celebrate people that are doing good in the community. So I think it has a very much a open embrace of different organizations and groups.
Thank you. Also, there's many references in here to surveys and have a kickoff day and then have a survey and then do something else and then have a survey. What kind of questions are you going to serve? I mean, what is the survey trying to?
Yeah. So that's something that we wrestle with because the program, the way that they laid it out, they want us to lay out the program, and yet they didn't want us to tell us everything because it was going to be informed by a survey. So we struggled because it had this kind of just dichotomy that was at odds with each other. We took this middle ground of like, look, our events and certain programs that we've had, Fall Family Fest, some of the movies, different things like that have been very successful. Volunteer days. So we're gonna kind of push into those for this first year and then kind of like explore new things. The new things have to come from the community and what they're looking for. And I think that we have some surveys in the past that share with us, some of the things that people want to see done, but they want it more updated. I think their approach right now is to be kind of science-based on this. So their surveys are not only for what the program provides, but how do people respond to being a participant in this? I mean, are you, how do folks feel on a whole host of things, after going through a series of these events? So they want to have some data on it. That's how they're collecting data on it. I get the impression that they've set up some set surveys as far as what their questions are, and then we'll have an opportunity to fold in to make it more local. We've yet to to find that out. We have a kickoff meeting in a few weeks.
So then PRPD would do work for the state and give information to the state. And tell me, I'm still confused about this. So tell me what the overall outcome would be when it's all over.
Yeah, so I think what they're trying to do is to put it in terms of like a hypothesis, their hypothesis is having community engagement and connection to neighbors will improve health outcomes, which they're not going to test, but people's connection with each other and attitudes about their community, being hopeful about where their community is and all that. So they're trying to take a public health approach. If this takes off and we have generated a lot of volunteers and get some good work on the ground, this is something they would roll out on a larger scale across the state.
But isn't that what we already know? You just said that most communities,
State doesn't know that.
because of our, I mean, we all have two handfuls of organizations that we're involved in, that is the goal of those organizations. So, you know, is to connect people together and make connections and be a neighborhood and a community. So
We're just going to make more connections.
The best grants are the ones that you find where you're already doing all the work.
Yeah, I would say it's this way. I think the idea is that they're recognizing that that's happening on this kind of more grassroots scale, local scale. They view it as important for the future state of California to encourage that investment. So it's, you know, like any number of investments, they're trying to get that started because they know it's really difficult for, as we know, many nonprofits that struggle just kind of month to month to put on one event, you know, or during the year to put on one event. But this would give us kind of a background for that. Christy.
If I can, quick question. I'm looking at the partner portion of this, and number 5, is there any restriction? And I know it's a careful line we have to tread, but incorporating some of the religious congregations in town, because they're already very internally tightly networked. And if we can kind of partner with some of those, you know, and a strictly non-denominational component, and incorporate their resources with this, is that possible?
You know, that's a really good question. My guess is probably this: if it's open to all, or it could be open to a geographical area, but not to a creed or religious belief or that type of thing. You know, you're absolutely right. That would be a group, that would make a lot of sense. I know, for example, like for the cleanup days, there's a ton of churches that participate in that, and that's non-denominational. They're just doing good work for the community, and I think it would be an easy plug-in, and that's an important part of community up here too. So we certainly want to look into it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to call out one of the really important aspects in the main part of the grant goals in their guidelines was trying to combat this social isolation. Particularly coming out of COVID, that people are kind of shutting themselves in and finding, depression, not feeling connected to anyone else. And so that's leading to really desperate health outcomes. And so I think this is one of the ways that they're trying to do that, but it's also equally balanced with the volunteer aspect. So it kind of serves both goals where, let maybe inch them out with a neighborhood barbecue sort of thing. So they, gradually put their toe in the water of feeling comfortable, with some social interaction with people they might not know, but then gear up to the volunteerism aspects that can then make them feel connected to the broader community. So I think that's part of it. I just want to mention the social isolation because that was a big component in the guidelines.
Yeah, thank you. Let me point out a couple of things. And, this is something we dove into. We were experts on it for a few days, but have left it since it was turned in. I'm on page, let's see. It says 3 of 20. I think it's page 58. 58. So it's purpose and goals. So there's a statement there on the strengthening the community, but I think the key goals of the program, and this gets to what Christy's talking about, cultivating social connection, increasing volunteer participation, improving social bonds and interactions, and creating a shared understanding, implementing evidence-based practices. So that evidence-based practices would be part of the survey work that Director Belfay was talking about. The other thing I think may be important, and this is dropping into the scope of work. So if you look on, this is on a couple page past that, 61. If that dot test is accurate, it's a colorblind test, I guess, maybe. On the methodology there, we got a kickoff meeting. So that was kind of community wide that we see it. And then kind of kicking into gear would be a project selection. That would be part of the initial survey. Project development. This is where we would need help from our partners on that. And I think there's lots of good examples that we could see how that would work. Project delivery, and then the follow-up feedback. We had split this up into a couple of different tiers. That was our invention. That wasn't part of this program. But tier one, we call the large community scale wide programs. PRPD classes, and what we call interest community events. So that would be like if there's mountain bikers, there's kayakers, there's moms on the ridge, that type of thing. That would be part of that interest community. They're not defined by geography. Volunteer events and projects. We're doing that. And we want to really ramp that up. And then I think importantly is partner events. And that's where we give a couple of examples there of some of the groups, but I think that's where we're really doing some good outreach with some of our local partners on it. The next page has the tasks and some of the deliverables. So that might help you guys get a little more scoped to what, what's involved with this. But there's a framework we're going to work through with a couple of our staff members, and then kind of ramp up with a internal meeting, and then kind of do some outreach after that to some of our partners. We've already created a form for them to fill out. Some of them have done that. So the form would just basically say, what they're trying to do with some events, what services they can provide, how it might fit within this program. And then we'll kind of go through those with them and see how we can help.
I have a few questions if I'm, am I correct in my estimation that this is a relatively new exploratory grant program from Office of Planning and Research?
Absolutely.
Okay. With that in mind, and I appreciate you telling Christy telling us the intent behind this is because the state is concerned about social isolation, big time. Secondly, congratulations on your efforts, staff, for making the application. I want to compliment you. That was a yeoman's amount of work, I'm sure, to put that together in such a short period of time and be competitively successful. And also, we're the only district amongst the recipients that have this. So it's officially awarded, is it not?
That's correct.
Okay.
And like I said, this is lightning speed for the state to go from
Right.
an announcement on the 8th, I think.
Okay.
The 3rd, they bumped it back a couple of days.
Okay, so bear with me. I got several questions. Do I understand the dollar amount is potentially up to $750,000. That could be committed and expended over a period of 22 months, I believe, is what I saw in the timeline in the agreement. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Is this grant typical, like other grants, we bear the cost first and then we get reimbursed from the state? And if so, what is the timeline for reimbursement? It's always a concern to me, as you all know, as one member of this board, particularly given when I looked at the exhibit B about the budget, the state, in their infinite wisdom, reserves the right, if they have a budget crisis and they can't provide the funds for this grant program, they'll terminate this agreement on us, and we could be hung out to dry if we've already bore some expenses and there's no reimbursement forthcoming. That's in there.
I was getting ready for my snarky comment about that's actually an improvement from the state, because they used to have an obligation for, if they could withhold the funding, but you'd still be on the hook for the terms of the completion. And that happened in 2010.
Right.
So they held organizations to the grants, did not change timelines,
Right.
and yet was not reimbursing folks for several months.
Yeah, and we're going to run. I think we're already doing a lot of things that are pointed out in the scope of the work and this, that, and the other. As far as the work plan is concerned, enlighten me. Your application and now you're going to award the grant said that you commenced work as of January of this year through the end of March. And you have specific targeted outcomes during that time period. Here we are on the 14th of March, and I want to know how close you are to accomplishing those three things that are pointed out during that 3-month period.
Yeah, great question. So I want to start with that one first. And that is, I just got a email today that they're revising those timelines.
Oh,
So they recognize that we have been with, we can't help but talk about it because we spent a lot of time on the proposal. So we've been talking about it, but we've not intentionally done a lot of work on it because we want to make sure that we have mechanisms in place to get reimbursed.
can you share that email with the board that you done? As far as the timeline's concerned, I just want a degree of comfort to know that it's being extended outward, because don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to be adversarial. It's just that when I see all the work that you've done and you put this proposal together and now this grant's awarded and we've got a timeline that says we're going to do certain things by the end of March, and you just shared with me, we haven't even really dove into that work effort yet. That concerns me, you know.
Yeah, so this is to the welcome to action requested, welcome to neighbor. Hold on a second, let me open this up. With exclamation point. I said that too boringly. It gives a little introduction, gives us some requirements they're requiring from a point of contact, 2 mandatory onboard sessions, calendar invites to follow. And then this is the part that I think you wanted to hear, Mr. Green, was I also want to let you know that we are making some adjustments to the deadlines for the project plan and other deliverables. We'll be sending you more information shortly.
That sounds good, because that's where I was leading up to. When I read this thing, there's no way in the world you're going to have a project plan for these neighborhoods by the end of this month. It's not going to happen. So that's comforting, and I wanted my fellow board members to hear this. So you see where I'm coming from, okay? And then we have matching funds, but it doesn't look like it's much. I'm really comforted by that on page on the font so damn small, but 78 and 32,000 overall over that 22-month period. That to me is, pardon?
You'll probably be spending anyway with regard to the programs that are ongoing.
Well, that's true. Well, you already know where I'm coming from. I'm always more concerned about the rate of reimbursement coming from the state, you know, because we already got how many grants that we're managing simultaneously, you know, it's always a concern. Don't get me wrong. That's pretty much the size of my question. I think this is an excellent opportunity for us. The only thing I'm concerned about, but maybe you can refresh my comfort. We've got an assembly of staff that's in this proposal. How much percentage of their time is going to be devoted to this as it relates to their overall work efforts? But I'm hoping that part of this program, neighborhood, that the volunteers might be educated to the point where they become more committed and they start stepping up and doing some of the work that staff's going to be doing. That's where I'm coming from, because that's kind of the intent, is create that connectivity and so forth. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
Let me see if I can address a couple of those questions. I think they're important for us. You know, that cash flow with the state has been a challenge for us. Because this is a different mechanism, you know, it's not your typical state grant project. It's more of a kind of almost a fee for service agreement. I mean, this is like the same type of procurement process they would use if they need paper copy, you know, paper for copy machines and stuff like that. It seems like a very direct process. So I'm hoping that reflects is a quicker turnaround on reimbursements. Getting your other question there about percentage of time. So I think what is one thing that our whole staff was cautious about is we didn't want to create a whole brand new program from the ground up, and it only runs 2 years, even though it's quite a bit of funds. We wanted to have it built into kind of existing things. And I don't think that was part of their original intent, but somehow that spoke to them. We have staff that are already working on events during the year. So that this first year, a lot of us, it's almost like our staff time now becomes subsidized because they are not only working on that event, but they're going to be working on activities related to it that addresses this. And I think, frankly, like kind of coming up with some of the ideas and how do we connect neighbors. And I think it's going to be fun for everybody in the room to figure out, like, how do we get people connected at, like, any sort of large event we might have here. So the craft fair, are they wearing buttons that indicate what neighborhood they're from or what kind of hobbies they are? Do we set up little areas where groups can get together and do some volunteers signing up, that type of thing. So we can have some really neat kickoffs. I know that at the Paradise, at the PCA meeting from the other day, comment came up about having some sort of, I don't know what they put it, but a fair or something that kind of showcased all the things that people are doing in the community. That fits perfectly with this. So that would be an opportunity for people to kind of get those groups into a location, could be here, Billy Park or wherever, where they can share what they're doing. We can set up some signups for volunteer days and have a mechanism to follow through, not just here's a brochure and we're cool, come and look for us, but really have something that kind of has some longevity on the community. So I think a fair portion of our staff time could be subsidized by this over the next couple of years. And I'm talking about folks that are in the rec programs. So I think that answers your last set of questions. Be happy to take more.
I'll agree with the congratulations. This is an awesome grant to get, and it was enjoyable getting to read a little bit more about each of you guys. We don't always get that, so I appreciated you adding that to the book. I think this already goes hand in hand with Love Paradise, which you're doing on April 19th. It's like almost exactly what this is asking for. So it's nice because that's already twice a year. And when I lived in Colorado, Denver did a big study on how to reduce crime. And it was the number one way was to know your neighbor. And so this goes, I don't, that doesn't seem like it's specifically part of this grant. It's just will be a side effect of a good one. But I also wondered if you considered perhaps partnering with Firewise communities, because they're very neighborhood driven and there's 17 of them in the works. They host kind of events to, get to know their neighbors. It's helping make safer, but it's kind of already happening. And I don't know if Park and Rec would feel like they would want to kind of go hand in hand with that.
There's that type of thing is exactly what I think makes sense. If it makes sense from the organization that's doing it, we wouldn't want to distract from their efforts, but at the same time, there may be some things to help fortify it. One of the requests on our purchases for this grant was, and we used to have one, but a mobile barbecue. So a mobile barbecue, and I keep pushing for my work in the box idea, but I something that could be mobile. We get to a neighborhood, maybe we just supply the barbecue and briquettes, and they're supplying food and someone to queue it up. But I think the idea is that to get people, like, bring them out, have a connection, and then they're finding about the Firewise community and some other things. There is a fair amount, it's not very long, but there's a fair amount in this grant that's kind of that exploration part of it for us to figure out, because there wasn't enough time in this grant to go out and talk to these groups. We got a couple of letters from some of the partners and some strong support from a couple of groups that we're able to connect with. So I think there's a lot of interest in this type of thing. We just need to open it up a little bit more broadly to see what matches the best for it. But we'd be very open to trying to dovetail with some of the other efforts that are around.
Yeah, because that's volunteer already based, and it would enhance probably the experience for a Firewise community leader to know they had access to maybe a portable barbecue. It kind of makes the whole experience better, and maybe people would be a little bit more inclined even to do things, if they have a partnership or access to better things.
And I think that's where it would be really interesting to find out what some of the barriers they may have on trying to get word out, because that type of effort, I mean, that speaks directly to, they want fire risk reduction. They want some of these things, and that's perfect with it. It'd be interesting to find out from the groups, like, what are some barriers from people showing up? Always food is a good thing. Unfortunately, this grant does not pay for food, but it can help pay for some of the things that may, like the barbecue, they'll pay for, but not stuff that you put on the barbecue. So there may be some other things like getting the word out, utilizing some of the other avenues. Town of Paradise has really good, email list, but that only covers the incorporated areas, so there might be some things that we reach out to other partners and figure out how to get information. But it would be really great to find out from them, what are their barriers from getting people to their events and interest. And that's where the survey comes in, I think.
In the beginning, when the campfire zones, zone captains the zones captains got their zone people together quite frequently. And the whole goal was to connect with each other and have a support system right there in your neighborhood. One of the things a lot of the captains did was CMA had a party in the box trailer, and they brought tables, chairs, barbecue, everything you need, paper products, all that stuff. And they may still have it, but they, everybody brought the food, but the CMA church had the equipment that none of us had because nobody had anything. So it was really good outreach for them. But that was the whole goal, was make connections so you can have a, potluck Monday, the first Monday of every month with your neighborhood, and keep in touch with everybody and see what's going on and who needs help and who doesn't. So is that kind of what this goal of this is?
Explicitly call out the zone captain concept. Now,
I saw that.
Yeah, I don't know how, and it'd be great for maybe you to share. I've heard mixed things about as far as how those are active today. But I'm just kind of curious how that mechanism seemed to work, and people gravitated towards it because they knew that's tying into that local geography where somebody that's 2 or 3 streets over, you see them every day, you might have waved to them, but you don't know who they are. Now they're a connection and they may be able to share information. So I'm curious what the status of zone captains are today, but
There's still zone captains. I think some zones are more active than others. I know my zone in particular has changed residents since then. And it's really interesting, like a lot of residents have left and some haven't come back, and then they sold properties and houses were built and they're new residents. And so it's hard to, even though you go out and say, hey, here's the information on the zone captains and follow the Facebook page or my email, and some will say yes and some will say nope. But I don't know what all the zones are doing at this point.
One bit of information that seems to tie everything together is is we understand that the scale of this is pretty big. And what we've learned from running the Elements grant and a couple of the other grants is the importance of tracking. So we're looking at this programmatically. We're creating different tiers of kits so that, and packaged experiences is another way to think of it, is that based on whatever we find out from this survey, we're prepared with different size and obviously different expense generating offerings, menu items to access each of those, so that we can be very good stewards of passing through as much of this funding as possible, because there's a very natural bottleneck to, investing $750,000 in a couple of years. So I think that's what we're looking at as far as the nuts and bolts, boots on the ground, who's going to be there in front of the humans. It comes down to ensuring we're tracking the people that are there. So it's a lot of sign up sheets, and it's a lot of educating the people that we're passing through on how to do that well, because we've been on the opposite end of a grant that's not run well or not educated well. So we're very full with what this, what the emotional components of helping someone else pull something off are. We're, as much as we're excited to get all of this feedback from the community, we also know what they're probably going to ask us for as far as game nights, barbecues. We're going to create different kits that address any of those, so that, yeah, we teach them how to run it themselves, because a lot of people are already doing a lot of the things. You know, now we're just driving around town. We were driving around earlier today, like, oh, the Paradise Little League. Oh, we can totally create a kit for them. And the soccer leagues, and what are the other recreational groups that, you know, that are already doing stuff that we're doing. It's just a great opportunity to seed that if we have the template correct for them. So hopefully that answers the nuts and bolts of how we're going to do the barbecues.
You know, one thing, and this came up earlier, like, and Scott mentioned some of those groups. Organizationally, we've done a lot of those connections, and those groups got their start here in some sort of fashion. And now they're their own nonprofit and robust, and in a lot of cases. You know, one kind of more recent example is a grazing festival. The first year, our staff did a lot of help for them to sort of get that event going, and now it's they're running themselves, are running it out of here, but they're essentially doing the planning and the organization. They got that figured out and are comfortable. And I think this is kind of a similar fashion that it could help seed some future events or activities, or add some capacity for some of the nonprofits that may want to do some things, but just haven't had, you know, the funding or opportunity for it. So it could help subsidize that.
So at the same time of all that stuff going on, would it hopefully feed some of the programs that the rec department has, and then possibly give ideas for new programs to offer for activities for kids and teens and adults to, because that's, I mean, I like this idea, but I mean, I want to see activities like physical programs grow and get bigger too. So
that was a concern I had. Again, going back to that idea of like this, we don't want this to be kind of a one and done thing, but just something that is sort of kicking off some things. I'm looking at my tiers here. So we had, again, it's page 62, I think, if I can read that right. But there's tier 2, PRPD classes, new events, and interest community events. So that directly speaks to your suggestion there, Mary, that the idea is that we could try some new things that we wanted to, the community wants to see based on the survey. And then I think this interest community stuff is stuff we're doing now. So we're Ridge Hiking Association participation, events, community paddles at the lake, you know, those kind of things are targeting certain groups to come out and enjoy this activity. But behind it all, and the reason anybody can figure out how to hike at Paradise Lake, for example, and yet we'll have 30 or 40 people show up for Ridge Association hike because they're hungry for those connections. And, you know, just getting to meet new people, getting to see old people, and just sort of having that kind of shared experience, I think has been very successful in that. We'd want to see more of that. This gives us a chance to experiment what some of those things might be like. Whereas right now we might have some fiscal restrictions on what we could try.
I'm going to make a motion to authorize the district manager to complete the agreement. Oh, I'm sorry.
At this time, do we have anyone that has a public comment?
Yes, Chair Anderson, you do. So I have quite a lot to say. I do agree this is an excellent opportunity, and I do want to see the most made out of it. So I believe that the survey results are going to be the Office of Planning and Research's desired work product. I think that's what they're trying to get out of this, and it's up to the district to follow the steps in between here and there. So we're going to put on these activities and then get information, and then put on more activities and get more information, send all this back to OPR so that they can see what's actually the effects of this are, what the benefits have been. So California Volunteers is this umbrella that covers the Climate Action Corps and AmeriCorps and other organizations. You can go to calvolunteers.ca.gov and check it. It's not just about like volunteer work for zero pay. And the agreement talks a lot about subgrantees, and the staff did not mention anything about subgrantees, but to whatever degree you're subsidizing these partners, whether it's buying equipment and letting the partners use the equipment, or whether it's going to be, purchasing something for their own use or whatever it is, I want to see those dollars stay in the district. When you talk about, Chico State being a great partner, yeah, that is, but they've got a giant budget from Sacramento, and this money that's coming from Sacramento to the district really needs to stay in the district. And, Steve's agreeing that's what we want to see, that a lot of the operations up here are on, shoestring budgets, and we used to have this giant windfall, which is, several full-time equivalent employees over this 22-month period. We want to see the most made out of it. And when you can get the people, not just people working for $0, but then they're getting these benefits directly in their own communities. And so when you talk about the neighborhood survey, McGilly might be broken up based on resident input. It happens that a McGilly resident did divide the Upper Ridge into neighborhoods for the Upper Ridge Community Plan a couple of years ago, and those neighborhoods were submitted in a formal process to the community, which approved them with no changes. You can find all of that in the Upper Ridge Community Plan. I don't know if you need to have 8 or 9 neighborhoods, but what really is the difference is people who are inside the fire, people who are above the fire and east of Skyway, people who are above the fire and west of Skyway. Those are significant differences within the community. And if you could have an event that was above the fire, east of Skyway, like whether it's at the Cal Fire McGilly camp next to the lake, or whether it was at the Forest Service property on the back of Boulder Drive, or any of those places where you can incorporate the recreational activities on our gorgeous Upper Ridge public lands that are already in tune with the district's mission, that would be a fantastic way to get people to come out and to meet one another, and also to meet district staff. And that's the sort of things that we want to see. And I'd be happy to participate in the kickoff meeting and any other way to make sure that, everyone in this district is benefiting from this gorgeous opportunity. So there's lots of other Cal Volunteers grants, even other neighbor to neighbors grants. This one is particular to this. And there's other things like, this is specifically about climate adaptation, but this particular grant is more about these social interactions. So that's most of what I want to. The language in the grant does talk specifically about firewise communities. So one of the areas that we do want to partner with. So agree with Director Goodland in that area. And regarding the zone captains, I did check because I saw this and I was quite surprised to see them mentioned. So the campfirezoneproduct.org goes to a parking page, and the Facebook has not been updated in more than 6 months. So it's more or less dormant, but something like this might be able to wake things back up. And so you could certainly talk to, or Mary could talk to the other remaining captains and see if that's a framework that could be used, again, to get this very local neighbor to neighbor, which is the purpose of the grant. Rather than doing, the community-wide things are also valuable, but the very localized, these are the people who walk their dogs down my street and I want to get to know them better. That's an important aspect to the community as well. So very good. I'm glad to see this money coming here, and I hope that we can capitalize on it for the benefit of all.
Thank you, Mr. Stoneberger. Would you like to make a motion?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there, John. I would like to make a motion to authorize the district manager to complete the grant agreement.
Madam Secretary?
Director Alma Green, Director Mary Belvay,
Aye.
Secretary C. Roddick,
Aye.
Vice Chairperson Jen Goodland,
Aye.
and Chairperson Robert Anderson.
Aye.
Motion carries with 5 ayes.
That moves us along to district report.
Thank you. Judging by the enthusiasm and discussion on that, I think there's a lot of interest and I think we'll be looking forward to lots of input on that. So we're team's excited about it. One of the things we had discussed a while back is having a particular staff member give a little focus, a little bit more in depth on a particular area. We're going to have Mark do that tonight in a moment. I was just going to mention a couple of things. I have a message there about our word of the year, and then kind of some of the updated information. But why don't we get Mark up here to talk about how many things, the variety of things that our maintenance staff have been working on, including storm response, pools, trails, so forth.
Hello. Obviously what's in the board report, I'll briefly go over that. The pool pump, it had been in there for many years for it to, the shaft finally rotted out and they had to get that machined. I'm glad to say, I wish I was going to say something to the piranhas, but it's up and running. Which will segue into another issue, unfortunately, that is not going to be nearly as pleasant of a conversation. The lining of the pool. It's cracking. There's fiberglass hairs coming up. We've always we paint the gutter because the kids always put their hands on it. So that's always been something that we've done yearly. Unfortunately, now it's overall. So this is something that is going to have to be addressed in the very near future. I'm working on it right now to get quotes. It's going to be a ticket. It is not going to be cheap. So there's going to be some decisions that got to be made. There are not going to be easy ones when that time comes. I'm working
Can they
on
put a new liner on top of the old one, or they have to
no, well,
remove
that's,
it all?
I'm not going to really speculate. That's why I'm going to have a professional come out and look, because there might be options. They might want us to drain the pool before they'll do any kind of accurate quote on it to really investigate. It is losing water, which is not that unusual for any pool, but we're losing quite a bit. We have bandaged over the years. We've put Band-Aids on cracks where we've emptied the pool, fiberglass cracks, and Band-Aided them up. Unfortunately, I think it's past Band-Aiding anymore. But I'm not going to speculate on pricing, but I just know that it is not going to be a cheap item to do. And that opens up a conversation when if it comes to where hopefully it won't be where they got to replace the whole liner, but at that time it might be worth stepping back and seeing if we redo the whole pool deck, because the pool deck is bad. It's really bad. And we keep banding it up. Basically that whole facility is a giant ace bandage. We put a new heater in and the pump works. It works good. I mean, it does for the years that it has, but it's just time. Everything wears out. Chlorine and acids that, balance the pools, they wear things out. So that one I will keep you updated as I get quotes. Hopefully I will have something by the next board meeting, at least a starting price on what I'm going to get 3 estimates, of course. So at least I can get a ballpark figure and we can make decisions. Hopefully they'll be able to say, hey, we can just resurface it, good to go. That's the best that can come out of it. I'm hoping that that's it. But I don't know, with the cracks in it and everything, we'll hope for that. So there's that one. I don't want to be the vote after we just got a $750,000 grant, but here it might be spending. We're going to need it. I need to spend your other money on other things.
I will bring your own fiberglass. I will mention one thing that about that and our budget process. So we're going through a budget process, but we had set aside. You mentioned Band-Aids, but I think essentially the last 3 years we've we've set aside Band-Aid funding for the pool. And we've used it every year. Sometimes, and we'll see how much this comes in, but that may be, we may bring that back to the board if it's, depending on what the dollar amount is, but. Yeah.
And I know this isn't anything new. I'm sure everyone has been in Paradise for a long time. Anyone, I know all you sitting at this board probably know the pool. It is. It's just one of those things. It's an unfortunate thing, but it's just reality. We'll move up to good stuff. The ball fields have been, our crews have been busting. We get these rains and then it, it takes about good 2 days to get the fields pumped out, dried up to where they can play a game. And unfortunately, up to now, the weather has been like you get 2 nice days and we work our butts off to get it and then it rains. And so it's been unfortunate because I love baseball. And we're doing everything we can to get it. And then right when you get it to that point, it'll rain that night or the next day. So it's been, but our crews, you know, they do a yeoman's job. They don't care. They just go out no matter what. They get it dry, they get it prepped. They don't care if it's going to rain. We do everything we can to do everything possible to get baseball out there. You know, I've been working Little League. They called me they emailed me last night asking if the ball fields are going to be ready, and it rained right up to about 2:00. So you can see that they want to get out there. And so I understand that and our crews do. So we really are working everything we can, but thank goodness there's going to be a break in the weather in Little League and high school. Because I'm sure you guys know Little League uses our field, high school uses our field. The girls softball uses our field. So they're 2 fields that get used a lot. So we try to do everything we can, and it actually has been doing pretty good. We've been working our tails off to get it there. Billy trails are really coming along. I can't wait for the opening. We're planning in the near future with our trail crew. With Sophia's getting together a volunteer crew. She does a lot. I know she's not always at these meetings, but internally, we couldn't be where we are without her volunteer programs. Could not be. So when you see her, she does a lot for this district. She doesn't go to these meetings very often, but that volunteer program is a big deal. And the people that do it, they love it. And I just like that grant you were talking about. It is amazing how they people want to rebuild our community. And when they can get their hands dirty doing it, it just that camaraderie and to know you're doing something for free and still be happy to do it and to build your community is a big deal. It's good to see in a small town. So that's going good. Can't wait to open up those Billy Trails. That's really going to be nice. The lake house, I don't know if anyone had ever toured it when we took it over, but it was deep 70s looking. It was the painting in all the rooms are the color of those doors. They're brown. And so we've done it. Yes.
Rooster wallpaper is timeless.
Yes, it had rooster wallpaper. It had wallpaper. That alone dates it. But yeah, but not there. But the rooms, it was just so dingy and dark. It was incredible that's how the walls were. They were painted brown. And it took 4 coats of primer just so we could put paint on them. It was that deep of a brown, but it is, and we're doing all that in-house. You know, that's the incredible thing. All these things I'm talking about, they're not subbed out. They're not done by anybody else. It's a ragtag crew in a little MASH unit shop out of Billy Park that's doing all this stuff, you know? And so, and they're doing it and it looks great. And it really is. These guys really, and they don't just focus because you got to pull them off that. It's like we had a tree go down during the storm, went down over at Billy Park. And so we had to, and so they're just like juggling all these other things and trying to keep it going because on top of projects, you still have regular maintenance. You still have to mow the lawns. You still have to take care of the bushes. And if you go to any park, they look pretty good. And yet they're doing all these other projects and it takes a lot to keep, I counted out there's 14 facilities that it is under my watch to keep safe. And more to come. And that's jogged all. And so it takes a lot of our staff and they do an incredible job, you know, and it's like I always say, you can be the world's best CEO or manager, but if you don't have the crew under you to do what you delegate, It doesn't matter how good you are. And these guys that we got are incredible. We have a lot of talented, you can pull them off over here. They can do this job and go run a tractor over here or chainsaw here or rake a lawn or run a mower. We're lucky. We really are to have such a diverse crew that can just do whatever and don't whine about it. I know that's probably not politically correct. But they don't, they just go, okay, and they go do it. You don't hear, no, I don't want to do that. Ain't my job. I never get that. That's very unusual to get, oh, that isn't my job. No, everyone understands they work for the park district. And we all do, I do it. I do whatever it takes. I've cleaned bathrooms. I'll hop in. It isn't like I just sit behind that desk all day. And it's the crew behind you that really has your back that makes me look good when I stand up here. And so they need a lot of credit for that. Overall, the parks look really good. I mean, it's just when you came in here and you look at these park and you go to aquatic park and this is after all the storms we've had, and it's been a pretty eventful winter, and yet all the parks look great, and they really do.
How many guys do you have?
There's 9. No, well, that's, what did I count up? 4, well, all together with lake and everything, I think it's, what did I count the other day? It was 14. Yeah, but that's not all. There's some part-time, that's a lot of part-time people. There's 4 alone that work just up at the lake that are just working weekends, because there's an AM shift, PM shift. And then there's the weekends that there's a person that just works weekends, and most of them are part-time. So, but yeah, they do a great job, and I'm proud of that. It's pretty nice, and what's good is that everyone gets along. Anytime you have that many personalities sitting in a room and working together, and yet everyone can joke and get along, and that really makes your job a lot easier, and there's not tension. Everyone's just, you can put each other in whatever truck together, and they have a good time and they do their job, and that makes everything better for us. It just reflects, I think that reflects on the whole district, to be honest. I think that's all the district, the whole park district, everyone gets along. And that is a big part of all the park district, is just everyone gets along. Everyone does their job. Everyone, I mean, there's always, it's like a family. You're going to have disagreements. If you don't ever think you're not gonna, then I don't know where you're living at for the last 50 years. Well, 60 in my perspective, but you always have arguments, but everyone gets along. You may argue, but the next day you have lunch together. And that's just the way it is. And that's a good thing. They're not held resentments. They're friends. So they get along, they work together. And that's how the whole district is. The whole district's like that. We may have disagreements, but the next day everyone gets along, and it's just so we worked it out. And
there are some big personalities on our crew. So yeah, we let them be them.
Well, I'm getting older and grumpier. I don't know, but that, I think it is, man. And it is. And we have a diverse crew. I'm going to say this, whether it's right or wrong, but, because that's what I do. But we have never, in all the park districts, I don't think there's ever been a full-time female employee, which we have a diverse crew where it's not just a bunch of guys. And it isn't like, oh, well, that's her job. It isn't like that. And that's a big deal in today's world. I mean, it's just everyone works together. There's all different age groups from 20 to 67. So it's a very diverse crew that everyone gets along with, and we should all be proud of that. That's the kind of atmosphere that we have help me foster. Yeah, all them words. Yes. But yeah, that's the way the district is. And I'm proud of that, man. It's a good place to work. There's frustrating days, but there's a lot of gratifying days, especially since the campfire. We're all part of rebuilding our town, and we should hang our hats on that and be proud of that. everything we do is not always agreed upon, but when you take the big picture, we've done a lot for this town. I don't know if people realize, right immediately after the fire, there was nowhere to even go to the restroom. I worked with PID just to get our bathrooms to get water. It wasn't even potable. What we could do is use it for restrooms, because when people were coming up to the houses, houses were gone. No restaurants, nothing. There was nowhere to just do basic go to the restroom. We provided that. We got our Billy Park going, we got this park going, and we got Moore Road going. Those are the little things that maybe get overlooked in the big picture. But I'll tell you what, those first few days, there are a lot of people that appreciated that. So we've done a lot, and I'm proud of it. And we all should be.
Thank you, Mark.
You're welcome.
You're done, sir. Thank you. One of the things we're doing, and Mark got to be the first guinea pig, but we'll rotate, give opportunity for a staff member to talk about program more in depthly, give folks a chance to hear more directly from them on it. So next month we'll have Jeff talking about events. We might bring Lori in for that too. May, put on your calendar, Scott. Camps, and I think getting the crew. What's that? Perfect. For the 10. Jot that down, Sarah, for Sophia in June. And then July, when it's at its peak of heat, we will have a discussion of our winter programming. So Kristen can share with us then, and Scott and team there, a little bit about our winter programming. We'll crank down the AC on that meeting. But I think that gives us a little bit of focus. What's that? Get us in the mood. We'll have fake snow machine going, maybe. I don't know.
Or just have it at Billy Park with the breeze.
Maybe. Just a couple other things I'll touch on a big one for us, and it's a lot of work, but our spring and summer activity guide is near publication, almost in our hands, almost Friday. It is available as an issue online. A lot of those classes are available for registration now. We have a listing of our spring events, a little bit here on the Elements program, actually quite a bit on the Elements program, and the Healing Trauma Through Nature. That'll be a good one for Scott to cover then. Going through some of the summer camps and some of the activities, you can see we already have some participants. Kind of, it seems like high demand for those summer camps already. So that's of interest. And then one thing I was going to mention, we had a whole series of input meetings related to trails, Billy Park, Yellowstone Kelly Trail, and we had a really informative buffer meeting here that was had good participation. See a lot of volunteer events on here. I was going to just bring up a couple of things on updated stuff or things that are coming down the pike here for us. Probably the next meeting we'll have our aquatic rec center. We have a proposal that has been a turnkey proposal through Sourcewell. That's our Joint Powers Authority provider. So that'll be something for us to look at. We've worked with them, over a whole series of months here. We have a revised plan to kind of work through and want to run that through our Rec and Park Committee. In the very near future, we will be putting out an RFP for design. We thought it was going to be a design build until I led Christy astray on that, on what the requirements are for rec district on doing a design build versus a design, bid and build. And so we're going to take that latter approach on it and put that out to our short list of consultants on that. So we'll have a short list for the design and kind of master planning that property, and then we'll roll it into kind of engineering and plan specs and all that. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm talking about the shop now. I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm sorry. So here, let me start. Aquatic Center is as a turnkey project. It is going to be a design, build, all folded up into one. And we'll have that proposal that will run through the Rec and Park Committee. Period. Shop is coming up, and that's going to be an RFP out for design. And then we'll kind of walk through the whole process there with the construction documents and all that. He's working on a template with the RFP. Board will be happy to hear that we've had after we had our agreement signed with Marsha Birch, our new attorney, we have had some quick turnarounds on some products. So we've been pleased with that. There was quite a backlog for us. So she's I know she's happy to see her emails now because she's gotten a bulk of them in the recent past here. So that's been several documents being reviewed, including a template that we want to set up for a bunch of RFPs that are coming out in the future. So we'll when that is complete, we'll run that through a committee and then bring it to the board for kind of just eyeballing it and giving kind of a form approval so we can go forward with filling out the scope, and each of those would come back to the board as far as like when they got the winning bid, we need a contract, but at least we'd have kind of legally sturdy language and kind of a form that we could use from here on. Happy to answer any questions. The staff's here to answer anything if there's particular program areas.
Do you anticipate going to the Rec and Park Committee with the RFP, I guess, for the shop property and so forth? I don't know when that you're anticipating that. Maybe that's going to be in April or May, perhaps. Yeah. And at the same time, we also update the Park and Rec Committee on the status at that point in time on Lake Ridge Park.
Yeah, we're
and
getting a update from our design team on that. They're updating timeline. They got some recent information from the county. They're redoing some of the fill and cut and fill calculations based on the county's requirements for septic and all that. So they're reworking that. We know for on the calendar right now, tentatively, we're going to have a workshop that is updating a public meeting, probably up in Magalia in June. So we're trying to figure out with them, maybe June, maybe July. And then as soon as we get kind of updated information, we'll update our Rec and Park Committee, but nothing to report right now. They're kind of reworking the timelines.
okay.
But just to clarify one thing, so we have the proposal on the aquatic rec building will come to the Rec and Park Committee, and then we're going to have a design build. Our professional services can go out to our short list.
Right.
So we're going to have that. There's certainly going to be input that's going to be, but we won't have that RFP until the construction document. That'll be the next
Understood.
milestone that comes
Right.
back to.
I'm just wondering, you're giving me some good insight. That's all. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And you know, here's another thing. We could spend a whole bunch of time on like each status of it, what I've been doing. And sometimes this hasn't been great because people want to know what status is. Feel free to connect with me because each of these has a timeline. I might not report on the micro progress is or even major progress until we hit certain milestones. So I don't want to kind of belabor each little step, but if there's a, interest in a particular project, an update that we need overall, then we certainly will accommodate that.
Can you help me understand the graph on page 117, number 8 under district report,
Yeah, just a
please?
quick update on this. This is we've had this from time to time in here, but
Right.
it has been helpful. One thing that's missing on there, I think it's in the title or in the description. Since 2019, we've been very busy with trying to put together grants and applications. And so from time to time, we've been giving updates on what our batting average is. So, one of the things that's I think important is know how, for our size district, we've had kind of, I would say, outsized success in these grants. I don't count, it's kind of a batting average, but probably should get rid of the categories. This is not submitted. because those are games we didn't play. So for whatever reason, we didn't submit those. So, that's neither here nor there, but for completeness, these are ones that kind of, we went down some path and then at some moment just decided it's not a good match for us. We're not going to do it. But if you look at our approval, we have right now in our pipeline, over $12 million worth of grants. And this is the second line down. The first line are ones that were not totally submitted, but ones that we have submitted and we're waiting an answer for. So we have over $11 million waiting on that. 12.8 million on grants that we've received approval for that we're going to be implementing over the next 3 to 5 years. Denied. Hey, we swung. We were up. But have you can see that we've been busy on trying to do this, and sort of like the lottery, you can't win if you don't play. But we've put in quite a few grants, and I think on the whole have been hugely successful in being able to get these grants. So I just want to give you an update. That was part of our effort, and
So Dan,
pretty much give
the
that.
text above that summary chart, you allude to eagerly waiting to a couple of big grants. Those 2 big grants, are they amongst those 4 that are submitted?
Yes.
And what are they?
Yeah, Lake Ridge.
Thank you.
So
What's the other one?
supplemental funding for Lake Ridge. And am I missing something else in there? I think there's some others that we're waiting on, but I can't think of what else is in that list. The 4 that we're waiting for. Yeah. So still in the pipeline, still waiting. I'll say, it's kind of funny, this grant that we got, we just, in the time it took to find out about the grant, apply and get word, that's been about a month and a half versus the previous grant that we submitted has been over 4 or 5 months ago. And they're still bumping it back and delaying it. So. Oh, continuation of elements. Yeah. And that one's more recent. So that's I think we submitted that January, December. So we're still waiting out on some big grants that have implications for us. So.
And are these things did the grant writer sign the agreement? We approved to hire a grant overseer?
Yeah, some of it was in-house and us. Yeah.
Right. So she signed the agreement. Was it a she or he? I can't remember.
Oh, yeah. So there's I'm sorry. I thought you meant the grant writing, grant management. Jennifer Arbuckle.
Right.
So she is underway with that. We have, I think, do a check-in meeting to make sure she has information and she's going to develop for us a little dashboard. And I've had some recent requests on making sure that we kind of have next steps, because we have a lot of things in motion. I want to make, just me personally want to have something, okay, this is our next step. And then we're going on to these other things.
Great.
So
great.
That'll be helpful. And we'll certainly share that when it's ready, but we haven't seen it yet.
Since the subject of Jennifer was brought up, refresh my memory, when we hired her, we authorized her hiring her, it was over a set period of time, right? Is that set period of time going to complement the same period of time for this OPR grant we just got? Because that runs 22 months, and I can't remember what her period was. I think hers was it 2 with a possible 3 years in extension?
Yeah, I think it was 2 years with a 3rd-year extension.
Okay, so I think we're okay.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you. Because you have her included as part of the staff on this $750,000 grant OPR program. So, okay.
And we hope to utilize those services, because I think it is going to be a complicated effort, and we want staff to be focused on the program and side, not reporting.
One more question. You referred to the, excuse me, surveys for Billy Park. Was that for the pump track? Item 6, outreach Billy Park Bike Park Survey. That's a mouthful. And so that was in regards to the pump track that's going to go there?
I'm checking. There's what's called a flow flow course there. So a little bit different. I'm trying to be kind of, circular, and this would be kind of a flow to take advantage of that differential in height between the top and the bottom there. So
I thought
it
we
would
were
be,
talking about a pump jack also.
yeah. It's
outside
both,
of
yeah.
The flow.
Yeah. And it has some other amenities too, but the design team want to get input specifically about those features. So I think that is you can go any number of ways on what features could be there. One thing I'll share with board members, one thing that we've been trying to promote as much as possible is utilizing kind of natural surfaces where we can, and kind of low maintenance natural surfaces. You've probably seen the bike parks, tracks that have mounds of dirt that someone has to come in there and shape and all that. We're trying to get as much possible. That's that kind of more of a using basalt, using rock, using some features there that may make it a little bit more attractive too, and making those kind of utilize those natural. We have no shortage of rock right now, so utilizing some of those things. We've been reaching out to some of the crews that are doing timber work and looking for cedar logs. So some of that rough cut cedar log may be helpful to utilize as a building block out there for it. So those are some of the things that material wise we're looking at, but then what do people want? Do they want jumps out there? Do they want a rock garden practice skills? Do they want something narrow? That was some of the input we were seeking.
And PID still has their mountain of post stone up there, just off Skyway. That I'm sure they'll share.
They are utilizing most of that for the potential dam rebuild. So they have suddenly that door is kind of closed. So, but we have other sources that we're exploring.
Well, we heard at the PCA meeting yesterday that the Fire Safe Council's going to cut down 12,000 more trees in town. So they might have something you could use.
I apologize for asking this, but in this monthly report, there's no mention under the category finance of the status of the audit that's underway. I'm sorry to bring that up, Captain.
Oh, not at all. That is actually something we've been diligently working on, especially the last few days.
Yes, I have been in contact with the auditor, and they are piecemealing me issues that they're having, and I try to make them a priority to get them taken care of as quickly as possible. I've only had to reach out to Rick twice for his help on how to handle whatever item that they had an issue with. So right now it is back in their hands, and they did say they're hoping to have a draft available for us by the 18th or the 19th of this month. So it will be on, as long as they follow through, it will be on the finance committee next month for review. And then it'll be brought to the board the following month because of the finance committee is after the next board meeting.
And refresh my memory, is this the second year of the same auditing firm that we're using now?
No, this is the first year.
It's the first year. So this is all new. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's part of the delay.
I'm sure it is.
Yeah. So I think there's they are being thorough. So I think that the more we can answer now will make for an easier second and third year. And just so folks know that at the next finance committee, we have a placeholder for this item, and we're going to update wherever we're at. So we'll kind of give that update, and hopefully, I don't think the audit may be ready to put in the packet, but we may be able to share it at the meeting, or at least some of the highlights of it, and at least kind of put that on the board's radar.
That brings us to, excuse me? Let's have a public comment.
So yesterday I was at the Prentice Pines POA meeting where they talked about the branding reserve study that all HOAs are required to have. So one of the items on their next fiscal year calendar is the scheduled replacement of their pool liner for $99,000 on a much smaller pool than the one down on Pierce or on Academy. So I think that I may have said this before, it would benefit the district to sort of inventory its assets. This is something that was brought up at the hazard mitigation plan meeting to really understand what the district's assets are and have a sense of what is the remaining lifetime of these assets. So you don't have this sudden 6 or 7 figure bill to understand, okay, this new pool liner that we put in and say we have to put it in this spring before the piranhas go in. How long is this going to last? And then make sure that when it's time to replace it, that money is available. You know, you are blessed with this $40 million nest egg and you're getting a good return on it. So there should be ways that you can say, okay, this portion of our reserve account is going to go for these capital expenses that we know that we're going to have in decades to come. And so that's not, you know, it'll be great when you have your own shop again and can do a lot more than you can necessarily today. But some of these giant expenses, whether it's the pool deck or the pool liner or these other things, you really need to understand, the district needs to understand, you know, this expense is going to come up in 5 years or in 10 years, and then not have to, you know, we're going to put a Band-Aid on it, we're going to put a Band-Aid on it, we're going to put a Band-Aid on it. You just say, okay, we're going to put $100,000 here, $100,000 here, and then when you need to take out $1 million, $1 million is right there. So I think that would be a good investment for the district to inventory your assets and understand their remaining lifetime.
Thank you, Mr. Stoneberger.
Mr. Chair, I can give a little response to that. So we have upcoming on our as yet to be reviewed strategic plan. One of the items is our master plan, which was last updated in 2016. One of the things that some districts will do, and they may do it separately from this, but our district has not done that, is to do exactly that, an inventory of all assets with an inspection and a replacement interval. So, you know, we can make some predictions, starting with a new building, even the shop, for example, that you can make a presumption about how long the AC units are going to last. And same thing around this building. We have, you know, fortunately, thanks to campfire replacement, they're all new AC units. And yet at the same time, we will have to replace those over the next, you know, a couple of decades. So there's mechanisms there to either predict it or do a percentage of replacement each year. So that's going to be part of that RFP when that goes out with the master plan. We feel like it makes sense to have, usually master plans are like what new shiny things we can do, but we want to have a sensible approach to replacing our very dated restrooms in some of our facilities and updates to ADA and things like that. So that will be coming in the future.
Thank you, Dan. That brings us to liaison reports. Let's start with you, Mary.
Just one, the Patch organization is having their daffodil dance and duets, friend-raiser, not fundraiser. It's more to raise awareness of what Patch is up to and where they're headed and what their goals are. But that is next Saturday, the 23rd at the Vets Hall. And the duets this year are going to be, I don't know if y'all know Carolyn Steele and Sandy Miller, but they used to do an act called Paradise, and they each dressed up in a dice. And anyway, so they're going to do some really fun act. And there is some dancers that are coming in from the Machupta tribe. And so he's bringing some dancers, and then we've got some singers, and then the band is going to be Sophistication. And it'll just be appetizers, and it's 7 o'clock on the 23rd. And there'll be postings on Facebook. So if everybody could go and get updated of what's going on with Patch. And I don't have any other liaison reports.
Well, Mary, didn't you attend the PCA meeting yesterday? You have a show on that?
I did, but you know what? I had to leave after halfway through. So maybe Dan could share.
Well, I imagine staff was there or a couple staff.
They were there, so
Okay.
they can share. It was great. It was a good meeting. Lots going. And Jen was there too. Lots going on in this community.
Okay.
Steve?
Let's see, with regard to the county, nothing pertinent or germane to Parks and Recs. I do want to announce that the Paradise Garden Club will be having their garden tour the first weekend in June as usual. And this year is going to be in collaboration with the kind of a welcome to paradise. All the realtors are getting together, and people from outside the area are coming up and looking at see what the town of Paradise has to offer and incorporate the garden tour with that. And in conjunction with also the Paradise Arts Council and Paradise Symphony, and have players at each of the garden homes playing or creating art that weekend. So that's coming up the first week of June. Get your tickets early. And that's all I had. The lake is full and beautiful. Yeah.
Thanks, Steve. Jen?
The PCA meeting had a ton. I think if you haven't already tapped into Explore Butte County, they're trying to make a 365 of the whole county. And I know there's a lot that the district can offer for that calendar. But yeah, and 12,000 trees that are still going to be removed, and the Goat Fest. I'm pretty sure there's something here 365 days a year that just in our community.
Since our last meeting, my date's wrong, but I was pleased to attend and somewhat participate with the wildfire resiliency workshop presentation here at PRPD, and it was well attended. I thought there was a lot of good information exchanged for the benefit of us attendees. Also on the 7th of this month, I attended and participated at Butte LAFCO, our regular meeting in the month, and the only item we had that was of any importance was a notice public hearing on the Biggs West Gridley Water District and the city of Gridley having some territory from that district detached. And the reason being is that it's still served by the city of Gridley, but it doesn't need the water service of the water district as originally set up decades ago. So it just was a no-brainer, just very simplistic. Today, or actually I should say yesterday, I went down to Sacramento and participated and attended a CARPD Board of Directors meeting. It was a good meeting. We had all the representatives there on the board along with staff in Roseville. We also spent the night, and then today we spent approximately 4 hours at the state capitol with our lobbying firm staff, and it was a really good experience. We got to interact with three members of the assembly, one of which is a sponsor of a bill on our behalf that is assigned with California Association of Rec and Park Districts. It's Assembly Bill 817. It's a very important bill for us. It relates to an effort for further changes to the Brown Act, and some of the further changes in that bill, we're highlighting, hey, folks, don't penalize citizens that are willing to be participants in advisory board capacities for entities such as ourselves and other entities that provide public service. The way the language of the bill was originally written, I shouldn't say this is a bill to protect the use of advisory citizens, protect their ability to participate, even if they have to do it remotely by Zoom. Okay, that type of thing. That's really important. The other things that we interacted with by another member of the assembly, as well as a professional consultant to the state Senate Land Use Committee, was some concerns that we have as park and rec districts throughout California as it relates to a myriad of subjects, ERAF, the state budget. There's a bill that's underway right now where they're trying to, and this is, I think it's supported by the California Roundtable of businesses and so forth, where they're trying to make it development impact fees to be subject to onerous requirements and so forth to make them. It's a roundabout effort to supposedly come up with affordable housing, but it's got some real errors in the text of it and so forth. But the problem is they're commingling I don't know who wrote this, but they're commingling that effort on development fees along with the Quimby Act, and the Quimby Act is totally different. It's got a different intent. That's where you get parkland at the time you do subdivision of land and real estate and so forth, or parkland, if not exactly land in itself, but you can get what's called fees in lieu of parkland, that type of thing. So we caught that, and we're trying to lobby with our lobbying efforts to make sure that does not go forward. That's pretty much it.
Thanks, Al. And I have nothing. So let's adjourn till our next regular meeting on,
I do have one comment on board, under board comment. And it's particularly timely and
sorry, that was liaison. Board.
that's right. If you have, it's been raining, it's now sunny. If you have anything more than a teaspoon of water sitting around your house, tip it over. Yeah, it makes a difference.
These more days are gonna bring mosquitoes.
That's it.
Board comment? No? Okay, let's bring this meeting to adjournment until our next regular meeting on April 10th, 6 o'clock right here. Thanks.